This is video number 15 in a series of videos where we're making a tank battle game in Unity for Android mobile devices. In this video we're going to solve two problems that we have with the enemy tank. The first is that when it drives around this terrain, because the terrain is not entirely flat, there are areas of the terrain where it's not flat. What happens is that the tank tends to bounce around a lot. Like here it's bouncing around, this one's bouncing around, and it's kind of jumping a little bit, if you see that there. Right, and we don't want that to happen. We can have a little bit of movement, but not this kind of uncontrolled bouncing. So this is the first thing we're going to deal with, and it's there are many ways of doing this, but I'm just going to show you kind of like one way, which is possibly the easiest way, and that's to look at the rigid body on the enemy tanks, on these prefabs, and just increase the value of drag to something bigger, for example 5 and 5, and then we'll monitor and see if that makes a difference. So now we're going to watch this tank come out of here, and we're waiting to see if there's any bouncing. This seems much smoother there. We'll watch this one. Remember, this one was bouncing. It's taken a similar path and it's no longer bouncing around. So that solves that problem. That's how to get your tanks that don't have any suspension, one way of getting your tanks that don't have any suspension to move around the terrain that's not flat more smoothly. As you can see here, it's quite smooth. Right, so that's problem number one solved in this case. Now problem number two is this, which is when one tank meets another tank, it just starts pushing it around, and it has no reverse gear, which means that it cannot reverse out of a problem area. For example, it could quite simply get stuck against a rock or a wall or anything. So let me demonstrate this. So now we're going to do the second thing, which is we're going to solve the problem of when an enemy tank gets stuck or collides or crashes into something else. And we're effectively going to give it a reverse gear. So as a forward and a reverse. At the moment it can only go forwards. So to demonstrate this, I am going to I have some buildings here, which I'm going to use as obstacles, to demonstrate this. And these buildings are just buildings that I've put in here, and they have a box collider around them. And there's nothing special really about these buildings. Alright, and let's press play and see now which problem we're trying to deal with. It's always good to have a look at what exactly it is we're trying to solve before we try to solve it using code. So we have a tank coming out of here. Alright, now it looks like it's going to crash into this building. So there we go. So it's kind of it can only go forwards, so it's kind of pushing itself along. Alright, and over here we've got the same problem here. Alright, so let's solve that. So we need to have a look at the script that is driving these enemy tanks, and that script is called enemy tank move. And we're going to open that script, and we started writing this script in previous video, and we're going to make some modifications to it. So if you're new to this script, I'll then take a screenshot. Okay. Okay. Right, I'll make this a bit bigger. Zoom in. Zoom in. Okay, so take some more screenshots. One. One there. One there. Okay. So I'm going to go through this script with you and make some changes to it. So what we want it to do is we want it to when it collides, when there's a collision with this tank, when this enemy tank collides, has a collision with something else, we want it to, if it's going forwards, we want it to go in reverse, right? But we don't want it to go in reverse forever. We're going to put like a timer on it. We're going to say, okay, we want it to go in reverse for 5 seconds and then go forwards again. Because remember, these tanks, these enemy tanks, are trying to go towards a position, all right, a random position on the battlefield to keep them moving around. So if they were continuously going backwards, they would be moving away from the position which they're supposed to be going to, their target position, and they would never reach it and quite simply just disappear off of the screen. Okay, so we don't want them to go in reverse forever, only for like a period of time, enough time for them to change to get a new position, and then to go forwards. All right, and that way they can kind of shuffle their way around obstacles and move around obstacles, and they behave more realistically. Okay, so at the moment what we have is we have this here. I'll just explain this quickly to people who are new to these videos. We get the rigid body of the tank here. We set the size of the gameplay area, okay, and we set how fast the tank moves and how fast it rotates. Okay, these are all modifications that you can do. We get the rigid body here. First thing we do is create a position for it to travel towards. This here generates the new positions, and when it gets close, less than 10 from the position, it creates a new position, and it continually rotates towards its position to give it like a smoothing, okay, to smooth its turn. Okay, alright, so what we're going to do here, and also here, this is the rotate function, and this is the function that makes it move forwards. Okay, right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to introduce a reverse gear, a timed reverse gear into this script. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to need a reverse time, okay, which is for how long do we want it to reverse. Now in this case, in this scene, 5 seconds, and given the speed of the tanks, which is quite slow, I'm going to have these enemy tanks reversing for 5 seconds. Okay, again, it's a public here, you can change this in the inspector, it's up to you. Every tank's going to be pretty much different. Okay, and then here I have a timer. Now I'm going to use this timer to time this 5 seconds, but note here that the value of this timer is greater than the value of the time that it's actually going to reverse for. Now I've done that because of this reason here, and I've put a note which is make timer number bigger than reverse time number to make tank move forward when it's spawned. Okay, because you'll see in a moment the condition that we use in which it needs to do a reverse requires that the timer is less than the reverse time. Okay, and therefore if we spawn this and didn't make this bigger than this, it would immediately start reversing. So that's quite simply to stop that problem. Now in awake here, as I said, this is all the same here, but what we're going to do is effectively, because we have colliders attached to our enemy tank, so if we look at our enemy tank here, as you can see, it's got a series of colliders on it. Okay, the ground there is not even. Okay, I'll just solve that problem now. Let's just flatten that. Okay, let's just do this one here. Okay, and this enemy tank now, which we can see more easily, it has all these colliders. So we can use these colliders to detect a collision. Okay, so in our script here, we're going to say on collision enter. Okay, on collision enter other, some other thing. Okay, if the collider that it's crashed into is, the tag of that is not the ground. Okay, not the ground. This is important. The terrain here is tagged ground. Okay, so we don't want it to do anything when it's touching the ground, because we want it to touch the ground. So we have to take this condition here. So the ground, the terrain is tagged ground. Okay, we want to ignore the ground. So we say if the other collider tag is not the ground, something else. Okay, set the timer to 0, get a new position. Okay, and just send a message to the console over here to say, hey, it's crashed. Alright, so we're going to expect something to happen. Now all we've done is set the timer to 0 and got a new position. In update, we need to make a timer, and this is the timer. So timer plus equals time.delta time, and all that's going to do is just act like a clock, alright, so to speak, okay, using time.delta time, and this value is going to increase. Alright, so what we're going to do there is say, okay, if the timer down here in fixed update, if the timer is less than the reverse time, now it can only be less than the reverse time if it's had a collision, because the timer is set to 0 here in the collision. Prior to that, previously, it was bigger. Okay, it was 10. Alright, so now it can only be less than 10 or less than this number. In fact, it will be set to 0 if this tank has had a collision with something else. Okay, so what we say here is, okay, if the timer is less than here, i.e. if it's been reset to 0 because there's been a collision, then do something. Then move in reverse. Okay, we're going to make a new function called move reverse. Okay, otherwise, if the timer is not less than the reverse time, okay, then just move, and this move means move forwards. Alright, so how do we move it in reverse? Well, we need to make a function here and I've made a function called move reverse. Okay, so this is like move forward, okay, move forwards and reverse, move reverse. Okay, this is exactly the same as this. These are exactly the same, except here we have a negative sign. Alright, this is exactly the same, no difference, except this is positive speed move, which moves it forwards, and this is negative speed move, which is going to move it backwards. And that's it. Okay, so I'll just run through the logic again. At the start here, we have timer is set to a greater number than the reverse time. Why? So that the tank doesn't, when you spawn it, all of a sudden immediately start to drive in reverse. Secondly, when it does collide, when there's a collision with something else, we check the tag of what it's collided or had a collision with, okay, and make sure, okay, that if it's not the ground, then set the timer to 0 and create a new position and send a message over here so that we can see what's going on. Then we made a timer, okay, and here we said, okay, if the timer is less than the reverse time, and that can only be true if we've had a crash, okay, we've had a collision with something that's not the ground, then move reverse. Alright, move in reverse. Otherwise, just move forwards. And here's the reverse function. Alright, that's it. That's all it is. So we go file save. Okay. And then we'll see if it works. Like everything we do here, we want to make sure that that the logic of what we're doing is kind of translated into the code that we write, okay, and try and keep it, you know, break down the problem one step at a time. Okay, so here we have this. I'm going to turn off this spawn manager for now, and we're just going to concentrate on this one tank we have here. This tank we can see here. Now it immediately has a building straight in front of it. Okay, so what we're expecting is that this tank will go forwards, and then it'll touch this building, and it'll go backwards for 5 seconds, and then we expect it to go in a different direction. Because the direction, the new position, is randomly chosen, it could move at any angle, but it will have a new position. Okay, so let's save this scene and see if that works. Yeah. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now it's going forward. It's got a new position, and now it's coming around here. Okay, we're in range and it's firing shells. Right, now what happens if, for example, okay, so the barrel touched the barrel of the player tank and it went into reverse, so it didn't try and push the player tank anywhere. Right, because that's kind of annoying. Again, so it's using this on collision enter is using all of the colliders, even the one kind of at the end of the barrel, to decide whether to go in reverse or not. And as you can see, that's working how we would expect. Alright, and yeah, it's still able to fire, and yeah, let's see it drive over there. Okay, so what happens now? Okay, so going over there. So effectively it was kind of stuck here. When it first started, it was stuck, and through a combination of, you know, moving backwards and choosing a new target position to aim for, it's managed to get itself out of that problem. Okay, and it's going over here now, and that's fine. And the same would happen here. Now you may have some problems if you kind of jam a building on the edge of a really tall hill, or something like that, some kind of impossible situation. But in a general context, a reverse gear is enough. Okay, you can do additional stuff like reverse and rotate 90 degrees and then do something else, but for this particular scenario I'm giving you one way, just by using a reverse gear, how you can get your enemy tanks out of problems. Okay, good. So last thing we're going to do is we're just going to see this. I'm going to remove this enemy tank. Okay, and I'm going to turn the spawn manager back on, and we're just going to have a look at this and just monitor it and see if it works with multiple enemy tanks in the scene. Okay, so we're expecting 5 enemy tanks to be spawned. Got one here. Okay, let's have a look at this one. Right, so it's gone straight into the building. Okay, over here in the console it says there's been a crash. One crash, yes. Okay, it's gone backwards for 5 seconds. It's taken a new position. Okay, and now it's come over here. This one looks like it's going to crash as well into it. Yeah, that's done a crash. Okay, it's going back for 5 seconds. Generated a new position. And it's got itself out of there. Now it may not get itself out of a problem immediately. Okay, it may take a couple of attempts, but eventually it should. Alright. Okay, given that you don't make it too difficult. Alright. So here we've got a reasonable amount of space between our buildings. We have everything we need here now. We have obstacles. We have hills, we have bumps and things here. We have plenty of things. These are operating as you would expect. And the kind of good thing about this is when 2 of them crash now, instead of them trying to push each other out of the way, they just reverse out the way here. Like we've got 3 tanks here, alright, and they're kind of behaving like this, and eventually they move on their way. And also here with this player tank, just gave us a little nudge. Okay, and that's it. Alright, good. So that's how to solve that problem. So we've solved. This brings us to the end of this video. We have solved 2 problems. Okay, first one being how to stop the enemy tanks from bouncing when they move around. Okay, and the second problem was, I'm just going to take one out here. Okay, yep, that works fine. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Everything's still working fine. Alright, and the second one was how to stop them crashing into each other, getting stuck, and also pushing each other around. Okay, and everything else still works fine. So we destroyed 2. We have 5 active. There should be 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Good. That's it. Okay, job done. So I think now we may come back to these enemy tanks. There's the 2. Okay, 2 that have been destroyed. Here and here. I think we may come back to these enemy tanks later on, but for now I'm quite happy with how they perform. And in the next video, I think what we're going to do is we're going to start to do some more tweaks with the player tank. Okay, possibly do something with maybe put some extra little features on there, okay, just to make it a little bit easier for the player, because we only have 5 tanks on here, and as you can see, you know, that's pretty difficult. Alright, okay, and also we need player health. There's lots more things to be done. Okay. Thanks for watching, hope you learned something, and yeah, see you in the next video.